Good evening. I sometimes wonder what the average man in the street thinks when he is bombarded with all these massive Indian land claims. Well, I've a new group of claimants to me tonight, another 1 million people who want a pound of flesh back forthwith. But here's Ted with a rundown.
The whole province knows him as a man of action and a consummate labor negotiator. But as a politician, it just might happen tonight with Webster. Jack Munro, Regional President of the International Woodworkers of America. But first, the BC government says it's ready to act on native land claims. But how much is at stake and what will it cost? Sitting in with Webster, Louis Bruyere, President of the Native Council of Canada.
Just by the way, I'll believe it when I see it that the provincial government is ready to act on native land claims, but that's beside the point. Here is a gentleman here who comes to me with broad claims on behalf of 1 million Canadians who are the Métis, of whom there are how many?
Roughly 1 million, but it's not strictly Métis, it's Métis and non-status Indians.
How many Indians are there?
According to the government, there's about 350,000.
Right, and now we've got 1 million claimants for their Aboriginal rights who are the Métis and the non-status Indians.
That's right.
What's a Métis?
Métis
Please forgive me. It says in your publicity material I should call you Smokey Bruyere.
That's right. That's
Smokey the Bear.
Well, I get called that an awful lot as well.
And you are what in the Native Council of Canada?
I'm the president of the Native Council of Canada.
Well, it's a bit of a culture shock, I'm sure, for many people to think that here's another group here now who are after what?
Well, it's not another group. We've been around for a long time. Our organization has been around since organizations were formally recognized by government since 1971. But our organizations started mainly on the prairies back at that point in time, going back to the Louis Bruyere days in the 1800s. And since then, we've been fighting for the same sort of thing in relation to the land and to our people's relation to that land.
Do you have any claims in British Columbia?
We as ourselves, at this point in time, are not involved in any claims. Our regional organization here in the province may be, but at this point in time, I can't speak for them. I'm
told your regional organization, the Louis Bruyere Métis Association, has been wound up, in effect in bankruptcy, short $85,000. Does that mean the Métis are at the moment not represented?
Well, first off, the Louis Bruyere Society is not a member of our organization.
It's a Métis organization.
That's right, it's a Métis organization.
They got $105,000 last year.
But they belong to the Métis National Council, which is a prairie organization and with descendants who come from the Red River settlements.
Now I had 2 young men in here yesterday, Sandy Bartlett and, what was the other name? Quick. Norman Evans, Pacific Métis Association, who want to be given money by the Secretary of State so they can set up and negotiate on behalf of the 10,000 Métis in British Columbia.
Well, that's anybody's right to go ahead and get organized if they want. But this specific Métis Association you're talking about, I've never heard of them before. They've never approached me.
They've approached Crombie, and he apparently won't talk to them.
Well, because right now...
your minister.
That's right. Crombie's Minister of Secretary of State, but as it is right now, they're funding an awful lot of organizations. And Crombie has said, since he's taken over, he's not about to fund any new organizations at this point in time.
Briefly speaking, you as the Native Council of Canada, Métis and non-stative, get what, $1 million a year?
We get close to $1 million. Not $1 million, we get close to $1 million for constitutional development.
That's for these conferences?
That's right.
And then you've got the Manitoba Métis who get $1 million?
No, not in constitutional work. I don't know what they get provincially.
$1 million from the Secretary of State, I believe, and $600,000 for Saskatchewan. And there was 100,000 that went down the tube in BC last year, or the year before.
You have some organizations that are having problems, but I mean, that's all organizations are having them kind of problems right across the country when you got a government that is not very conducive to listening to what people have to say, and they're saying, do everything with volunteers.
I've interviewed all the major Indian leaders in British Columbia and tried to get them to spell out specifically what it is they seek to attain. Do the same for me.
Do the same as they've done?
No. Tell me what. You're going to another constitutional conference under the Aboriginal rights, and that's under the Charter, correct?
Right.
And that'll be the first, second, third, or fourth conference?
Be the 4th conference.
You have a set of demands?
Yes, we do. And what we're going forward with is that the Aboriginal people of Canada have the right to self-government. And how we get at that right to self-government is going to become down to negotiations between the federal, provincial, and Aboriginal organization, whether it be regional, provincial, or local. And they will decide such as Seychelles did, in terms of they were the one community that sat down and decided they were going to negotiate self-government for themselves.
And they've almost completed that on account of forming their own municipality on their own land.
That's right, that's what they've done.
One of the major concerns, and I'm reading from your booklet, of the opponents, is that self-government for native peoples translates into creation of ethnic and independent states within Canada. Now, many people believe that. I tend to think that myself. Am I right or am I wrong?
I believe a lot of people and Canadians in general believe that.
Well,
that's what they want.
Are they entitled to believe that?
I hope so, because I mean that's what we want. We want our own communities with our own people in those communities who can then set up what they consider to be their form of self-government. Now, I can't tell you what self-government is going to look like in British Columbia, as I couldn't tell you for my own community.
But you don't have the tribal land claims on which there are many treaties that many Indian bands do you?
Well, we don't have the bands per se or the lands, but we have the ancestral heritage from those bands or treaties or groups of people wherever they happen to be. And that's what we're basing our Aboriginal rights on, is our ancestral background to those lands.
In other words, where you were fur traders in the early days, or in northern Saskatchewan or Manitoba, or British Columbia.
Or British Columbia, as
Where
you say.
in BC?
Well, as some of your organizations that you have probably talked to already have said, in terms of northeastern BC, there was an awful lot of Métis people who came up through that area in terms of trapping and in terms of guiding, bringing the white settlers in, as well as in southern BC.
And presumably speaking, therefore, you're preparing territories which you say that should be ours for self-government, set up our own municipalities, etc., etc.
Well, it depends on whether it's going to be municipalities. Some of the some people want municipalities, such as the Seychelles. Others want different forms.
Well, if you
of
want
municipalities.
self-government, you've got to have something to govern. You can't just govern on hunting and fishing rights, can
Well,
you?
that's right, but you can't just govern on a basis of municipalities, because in terms of our way of life and in terms of northern communities, that isn't possible, because people haven't looked at it as municipalities.
I'm well aware that the Indians and the Métis have been scabbily treated in many ways over many years. And when homogenization did not take place, we have this residual problem, correct?
That's right.
But it's difficult to understand, especially what the Métis want. What is a Métis?
A Métis is a person who's accepted by his community as such. And whether you're 1/8 Indian, as you mentioned earlier in terms of Louis Bruyere, or whether you're a half-breed, or whether you're
Are we allowed to use
Indian.
the word half-breed?
Well, I don't know why not. I mean, it's been used in terms of history in this country. I mean, the people on the prairies sure don't like the term, but I mean, it's in our history books and in the white person's history books that people are being taught.
I don't like this genealogical differentiation. It makes me think of nasty days in Europe. You
Well,
know?
yes, I can agree with you on that point, but at the same time, you're very proud of your Scottish heritage.
I'm a Canadian.
Yeah, but you're also very proud of your Scottish heritage, as I'm very proud of my Indian
I
heritage.
don't wear the kilt.
I don't wear a loincloth either.
But anyway, you've got an amorphous set of demands. And have you achieved any territorial victories in the search for justice for the Métis?
In Northwest Territories, our group up there, our provincial or territorial organization is involved in the land claim situation with, along with the Dene. They've got a Dene Métis Association or Secretariat set up to negotiate land claims. And that's the only place right now where the Métis are involved in any land claims across
But
the
no
country.
matter how we slice the talk, the fact is that this additional 1 million people with claims which may well be recognized under existing Aboriginal rights in the Charter, and all the governments have said they want to settle, you know, they've all said. The problem is by what authority Native peoples are given self-government and what the relationship would be with the federal and provincial governments afterwards.
That's right.
You'd just be creatures of the government as another municipality is.
Well, that depends on how you read the wording. Okay, we had discussions this morning, as an example, with the Deputy Minister of Interprovincial Affairs for BC, and that was one of the questions he raised: is are you looking at just a municipality? Are you looking at a third order of government? Are you looking at sovereignty? Okay. Now, what we're looking at in terms of our wording is that the Aboriginal people of Canada have the right to self-government within Canada. So it leaves it open to...
Providing they're given massive subsidies to set up this self-government.
Well, I don't consider it to be massive subsidies. I mean, there's money out there being used right now for Native people. And if that money was turned over to some institution that Native people happen to set up and said, this is what we're going to do with that sort of money, then it's not new masses
But
of money.
you would, of course, be an integral part of our system of BC hospital insurance, policing, fire, and all the rest of it.
Yes.
See, all you want to do is set up new towns and say these are Métis towns.
Well, that could be what some people want.
Okay. It's tough, though. With the best will in the world, it's tough to see how it's going to be done
Yes.
without creating some kind of backlash down the road. Here's another million people represented by you. You know, there's only 20 million in the country. Oh, 24.
That's right.
Anyway, here he is. Smokey. No, that's not his proper name, but it says here you can use Smokey.
That's right. Everybody knows me as Smokey.
It's Louis.
Right.
I'm going to call you Louis. Smokey Bruyere, President. You paid by the Secretary of State?
That's right. By your tax dollar.
Oh, don't rub it in. Of the Native Council of Canada. Make what you will of him. Ask him a question after the break. Louis Bruyere is from the Native Council of Canada, and we've outlined some of the aspirations, aims, and desires of the Métis and non-status Indians.
That's right.
A non-status Indian, it's what?
Is an Indian who was an Indian under the Indian Act, and who, for some reason or other, lost that status as being an Indian.
Went to live in the city.
That's part of it. Another part of it is when men came back from the Second World War, they all of a sudden found themselves enfranchised, because at that point in time, the Indian Act said that if the government considered you to be civilized, they could enfranchise you. So we had many men coming back from the Second World War.
Oh, having been served as soldiers, they were then entitled to vote.
That's right. They were civilized, according to the legislation.
Oh, that was pretty brutal, wasn't it? That's pretty
Sure was.
racist legislation. Go ahead to Louis Bruyere.
Yes, Smokey. I was curious. Do you know Grafton Najudli of the Yukon?
Yes, I do.
Okay, now I met this man one day.
Ask a question. I don't want to get into somebody else's personal history, and I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'm a white man, and I was told by Grafton Najudli what are Aboriginal rights.
Go on.
And he said that the Aboriginal rights are of a person to go out into the woods and live off the land. I was born in Canada, so I consider myself an Aborigine. Thank you.
What do you say to that? He's saying your Aboriginal rights, the right to hunt, fish, and live off the land.
Well, that's part of them. That's one part of it. I mean, there's many other parts of it as well.
Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Jack. How are you tonight?
Not bad.
That's good. I have one thing to say. I'm born and raised in Canada. I'm 32 years old. Ever since I was born that I can remember, I think I've heard nothing but these people whining and crying and want this land for free. I don't see the government giving me anything at all. Why should they be given this and money and everything else when they don't do anything for it? If they want something, they can go out and work just like anybody else and earn it and go out and buy a house and some land, and what the hell? Why should they be entitled to more than what I am?
Okay, good question.
Well, I think everybody is entitled to the right to life in this country, and the Aboriginal people of Canada gave up an awful lot in this country in order for the white man to be able to settle here, and brought them along, helped them out so they weren't all dying in the first couple of months of being here.
Oh, some of these old Scotch fur traders wouldn't have died.
An awful lot of them did, though, Jack. An awful lot of them did. So I mean, the Native people gave up this country, and basically to a foreign system, and what the hell? All they're asking for is a little bit of it back.
Well, it's just the way I feel. It's not. This isn't a racial thing with me. It's just that my grandfather came here at the age of 14. He had a grade 3 education, and he worked hard in the woods of Quebec in the lumber camps, and he made himself a success.
Fair enough. You've made your point. Got to carry on. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Bruyere.
Yes.
Let me be the devil's advocate, sir. What gives you the feeling that the Indian people are more competent to govern themselves than the Canadian government? And another adjunct to this, if I may add. What areas are is the Department of Indian Affairs giving money to, or providing money to the band people that the Indians disagree with, that they feel that is there some specific...
Okay, is he on a different ballpark? Are you
Yes,
concerned with the Indian Affairs Department?
No, we don't deal with the Department of Indian Affairs at all, other than trying to get people back their status back. But a lot of Indian people come into this world as we see it now, and they work their way up through the system, and not everybody is out after the government handout.
Maybe there were too many handouts in the early days.
That might have been part of the problem, but we'll see as to how they decide for themselves.
Go ahead from Clearbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Welcome to Vancouver, Smokey. This is Randy Putra.
Thank you, Rand.
Jack, I'm the Vice President of the Louis Rail Métis Association of BC.
Are you the organization described as fiscally irresponsible by the judge?
Well, I suppose you can say that if that's the white man terminology. But
Well,
just
it's
a second,
85.
Jack, before you jump on me, let me tell you why perhaps we are fiscally irresponsible.
Sorry.
And the fact is that government so intentionally and systematically is trying to get rid of us, Métis. They'll never do it. But I would just like to ask one thing of Smokey. And by the way, Jack, if you want to give fair time, you had apparently you had two people from the Pacific, and they're no association at all. We are the only representative of the Métis people of BC, and I would certainly like to be given that opportunity.
Listen, you're bankrupt.
We're bankrupt, but we're not dead.
You owe $85,000.
We owe $85,000.
Yeah.
Jack, if you would hear the real side of the story, then you wouldn't be talking like a dumb Scotchman. You'd be talking intelligently.
That's a racist remark.
Well, hell, you say the same.
There are
Matter
no
of fact,
dumb
it's a compliment.
Scotchmen.
But Smokey, I do hope that your organization does very well at the First Ministers' Conference, and I want to know if you're going to support us.
We'll support you as far as the Métis support those Indian people who are non-status and living off reserve.
Well, you can be assured of that.
Rennie, you know me. We've talked about this many times before.
Yes, sir.
Just
Well,
by the way,
I'm on your side, Smokey.
just by the way, it's unlikely they'll get a chance to use the little tape I recorded you through the Pacific Métis Association, because I've kind of covered the topic at the moment, and I'm kind of jammed till the end of the week. Thanks, Rennie. Rennie Potran.
Right.
Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
Yeah, when I hear the Native people say they want their right to self-government and self-determination, I think they really want is their own sovereignty. And I think the viewers should realize, a lot of them don't. I think that means their own country, their own capital city, their own laws. They might want capital punishment. It might sound good on paper for some people, but I think the chances of it happening is absolutely impossible.
Well, I must admit, it sounds to me like a bit of double talk. And the politicians are more guilty of double talk than you are.
That's right, and we're, at this point in time, our organization has never ever talked about sovereignty for our people that we're representing.
Well, I think that's what's being read between the lines, that you actually want your own country, as it were.
Well, listen to
this is our country.
Yeah, but
and we're not saying we want our country.
Just a minute. You're saying ensuring that Aboriginal governments have sufficient revenues to provide public services comparable to those for non-Aboriginal governments.
What's wrong with that?
Nothing, but that's what you want.
That's right.
You
But
want
that-
a
but that's not-
separate
but that's
level
not
of
sovereignty.
government.
But that's not sovereignty.
Sovereignty within Canada.
Well, within Canada it may be, but that's not the way we understand it.
Okay, boy. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jack, I'm happy you got Smokey on. Smokey is one nice man, and I can assure you that I'm glad that he's talking about what he's talking about, because I tell you, he's been here long before you and I, before the Scotsman, the Austrian, and German has been here.
Well, part of them has been.
Yeah, that's right, and he's fighting for the right thing. My parents came out, grandparents came out back in 1800.
I don't want history, I want questions. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes, I'd like to ask Smokey a question. I'm Métis Indian from Alberta. My brother is the only one that belongs to a colony, but I've lived in BC for 30 years. Do I have any right, Métis status or anything in BC?
No, not necessarily. It depends on the organization that's going to be representing you here in the province of British Columbia. But you do have the Aboriginal rights in Alberta and on the colonies, as you say. The colonies are one of the only functions that are one of the only land bases for Métis people in the country. It's, as I say, only one of them.
What's a colony?
The colonies, as they were set up in 1938, I believe, under the Alberta Act in Alberta, and what they are is like reserves, but they're land set aside for Métis people. And they run, as you said earlier, municipalities.
Oh, this is good.
That's what some of those people in Alberta want. there's roughly 5,000 people living on those
Do
colonies.
you
in Alberta.
endorse these kind of colonies?
If that's what people want, yes.
What do you want now?
I want what the people want, and that's what I'm here to represent.
You could run for the leader in a political party too, I'll tell you. Maybe that's what you are. Go ahead from, I made a mistake. Go ahead from 100 Mile House.
Yes, hello?
Yep.
Yes, I am myself all for Indian rights, but since many of the Indians seem to be trying to remove themselves from the stigmatism of white people, I have a few good suggestions for the Indian rights. Indians should be allowed all the Indian rights they want, with a few minor provisions.
Such as?
For one, that when they are given sovereignty or whatever, or fishing rights or land title, they must operate and manage those land and fishes in the manner in which they did before the white man entered Canada, such as herring rakes for fishing and building cedar log houses and wearing cedar clothing and the like. I think that if what did take place, many of the Indians today would probably change their minds about wanting title and fishing rights, because they would not want to live in this way. And the real Indians, which would really deserve it, would. I'll hang up and wait for your response.
Do you think he's pulling your leg?
I think so. Indian people have progressed as much as anybody in this country has, and when we're saying we want the right to go out hunting and fishing, I think one of the things you got to realize is that Indian people, Native people, Aboriginal people in this country are the best conservationists, best environmentalists than anybody, because if they don't have that land and they don't take care of that land, they're not going to be able to live off it, and that's what they want.
You're not going to get any system which is going to put you back to an Aboriginal style of existence.
Nobody's asking for that. What I'm saying is that you would have the opportunity to be able to do that. You go into some of the northern parts of the provinces across the north and in the Northwest Territories, you have an awful lot of people still living off the land.
Anyway, when do you go to Ottawa to plead your case again?
Well, we'll be back in Ottawa on Friday, and we'll be in the Ministers' Conference in Halifax next Wednesday.
And then April's the big constitutional conference.
The federal government at this point in time is suggesting March 26th, 27th.
Cynical remark, where the Mulroneys and everybody else will give you lots of lip service, double talk, and nothing will be achieved.
That's what they say.
That's what you think.
Exactly.
I'll be back with Jack Munro, NDP leader, after the break. Deadly serious with Jack Munro, who's overexposed on the media these days. Are you prepared right now to withdraw your semi-jocular suggestion that you're going to tackle the natural leader for the NDP, Mike Harcourt? Are you prepared to withdraw it?
No.
Why not? I watched you today and you say, well, I'll think about it just a minute.
Semi-jocular? What do you mean semi-jocular? Overexposed. The media, I did not tell the media a damn thing. The media have blown this thing out of all proportion.
Did
your buddies?
Do you know any Labour leader in British Columbia who's been a serious contender in view of the NDP's strong tradition that it will not submit itself to special interest groups such as Big Labour?
Well, Jack, we've only been in the government for 3 years. Maybe that's what's wrong.
I can think of half a dozen NDP leaders in British Columbia who wouldn't have touched a trade union leader as the number one man.
Well, maybe that's what's wrong. Maybe that's what's wrong. Frank Howard was certainly a fine member of Parliament.
He wasn't a leader.
Fine MLA. He was a leader in the I.W.A. He wasn't leader of the party, no. But he was House leader.
Barrett always kept a clear-cut division between him, the NDP and the union movement, didn't he?
Sure he did, but maybe that's what's wrong.
Are you suggesting that you might seriously go for leader of the NDP when your union has got at least 18 months of travail against it until your contract is finally signed?
I'm seriously considering whether I should run for it or not, Jack, and I didn't start all this media exposure. I am absolutely flabbergasted with this.
You see, you're a bit like Van der Zalm. You're easily available and you're bright to interview. So you get called upon a lot. But quite seriously, though, how long is it before you square up the I.W.A. contract?
Well, it's squared up, Jack, but we have a commission that we're meeting the government on Friday morning to take the next step in getting the commission formed, and that commission has to report by March of 1988. And the agreement expires on the coast June the 14th of '88 and June the 30th in the interior.
Would you not be letting down the 30-odd thousand members of the I.W.A. if you walked away to become the leader of the NDP, if you could beat Harcourt?
Jack, the I.W.A.'s got lots of leaders in it. We've got vice presidents, and the I.W.A. is a mature organization, and it would certainly survive. One of my major problems is the I.W.A., and I feel, you know, a major part of the I.W.A., and I'm not sure that I can tear myself away from it. We've got some things going for us.
That's the point I'm making to you.
Right.
Here you are identified as the I.W.A. You quote won that long 4.5-month battle to some extent,
Right.
not all the way. And now you're talking about running against Harcourt, who is an unopposed natural, if you like that kind of politician, for the NDP.
I'm not running against Harcourt. I may run for the leadership of the NDP. I have been a supporter for a long, long time.
Let me give you a test as a politician. Just a little test, okay? What's your reaction to Van der Zam's wish to cut down abortion?
Jack, I don't mind talking about a platform if I decide to run against.
First time in history you've said no comment.
No, I'm not saying no comment. That's not what I'm doing, is putting forth a platform tonight. I'm trying to make up my mind. Should I leave the I.W.A. and should I run for the NDP leadership, or should I not? Should I stay in the I.W.A.? The answer to your question is I am a pro-choicer. No question about it.
Fair enough. The Minister of Health is a pro-lifer, by the way, and of course so is
Well,
Van
the
der Zalm.
Minister of Health is part of a cabinet that's shallow, and this government doesn't know what the hell it's doing.
And the Premier
Doesn't know what he's doing either.
Speak for yourself. The Premier
I
has
don't
been
think he
given
knows what
an
he's
hour's free time, unquestioned and uncritical.
It's a disgrace.
Just a moment, please. On a radio station, and when I tried to get Mr. Harcourt to denounce that, he was lukewarm. Do you think it's denounceable?
I think it's a disgrace, Jack. The nonsense that NW is going through in their recent love affair with Van der Zalm and the Socrates. It isn't my role in life, but I hope whoever the hell has got anything to do with radio licensing is taking note of this, and when their license comes up for renewal, should sure as hell be looking at it. It's not a public service anymore. It's lock, stock, and barrel, a tool of this government and the Premier in particular, and I think it's a disgrace.
Well, he's certainly a very attractive Premier who gets lots of media, like you get lots of media too.
Well, he's got charisma. No doubt about it, Jack. You can't take it away from the guy. He's got charisma, but he doesn't know what he's doing.
And anyway, if you were the leader, you'd come out swinging on all occasions.
Certainly. That's the problem. That's the problem. We have not had an effective voice against a hell of a lot of things.
You're attacking Harcourt. The NDP has
I'm not attacking
You are
Harcourt.
so too.
Harcourt's not the leader.
Right at the moment, you haven't got a leader in the NDP. Am I correct?
I'm saying that in my opinion, for the last while, Jack, the opposition has not come out strong against a lot of things that we should come out strong against. And this province is a natural resource province which relies a hell of a lot on people, and it's about time somebody start taking some honest political decisions that concern themselves with people, not with politically. What's politically good for me? And if it isn't politically good for me, a hell of a lot of people won't take a position on it.
Okay, I'm just going to close this segment with quoting from your friend Lyle McWilliam.
Lyle McWho?
Lyle McWilliam.
Who is he?
He is an NDP ex-MLA who said
Ex-MLA.
Munro is a dinosaur in a province that is trying to move ahead.
McNugget or whatever his name is takes labor's money, but he sure as hell can't tolerate us. He wanted to wander and have nothing to do with us, but get his picture taken with some of our pickets today, and thank goodness, or not today, during our strike. Thank goodness our pickets had the common sense to tell him to go someplace and get his picture taken. He doesn't like the trade union movement. And he didn't win the election that's important, Jack. By-elections aren't the important ones. The general election is the important one.
Mr. Munro.
Let's have a break.
I'll decide if we're going to have a break. You decide to make up your mind after the break.
Jesus, was Steve telling you what Linda McClellan's going to do?
Yeah.
$400,000 a year, and he's not 40 years old. Just you old farts should make good money.
She's good.
Ah, she's skinny.
She's adequate.
I know her. I met her a couple times. Yeah. The skinny one. In Chicago, anchor person for Chicago.
Anchor woman, for
Anchor
God's
woman.
sake. Wait,
Yeah.
I mean, shut up to the crew.
The crew needs a union. You don't have to take that bullshit.
This is my goddamn silent studio. The only person that talks in here out of turn is me. Shut up.
10.
On another topic, more important topic perhaps, when people accuse Van der Zam of sabotaging the 15% negotiations by suggesting an increase in stumpage, it was you, I think, who first suggested the increase in stumpage, correct? To get the Americans off our back.
Yeah, we said early in 86, Jack, we said three things. One, we should negotiate a settlement. We should review the stumpage system, and if we find that it's too low or soft, then we should increase it, and we should keep the money in British Columbia and spend it on reforestation.
All right, now
that was our
very
position early on in 1986 when the position was starting to deteriorate, when we started in Canada to make some silly noises.
But you and your friends in big business had been doing very well after the previous countervail, and the our share of the market went from 17% to 33%, did it not?
Share of the market. That was our other point, that we should cut down our share in the market. Jack, this mess that we're in is not Pat Carney's fault. The people that are squarely to blame in this thing is Bill Bennett and his government, Adam Zimmerman and his nonsense, and the Council of Forest Industries. And that's the people who started to destroy what should have been a sensible settlement about a year ago.
In other words, the countervail had been beaten back, what was it, 3 years ago?
83, right.
But we continued to push into the market at a vast expansion rate with our cheap dollar.
Yep.
And you say that if the industry and the government had been half awake, they would have cut back. You didn't suggest cutting back at that time, did you?
Yes.
You what?
We didn't start it, and we didn't say it publicly, but we had meetings and said, look, it doesn't make sense when the Americans are mad at us, when we've gone from, depending what year you use, at one point it was 19%, if you go up to 77 or 78, it was 27% of the market. When we go to 31 and 32%, and they're saying, look, that's too much, and we kept increasing it. We went up to 33%. We said, look, we're not going to start this nonsense. The industry has to have enough fortitude, foresight to cut down on the market. We're rubbing salt in the wound, grinding it in.
You can't blame that on Bill Bennett, can you?
Jack, there was an opportunity. There was a window there for us to negotiate a resolve, not quite a year ago, almost a year ago, and we talked about the envoy system, and that was shot down by the then provincial government, the Council of Forest Industries, and Zimmerman's committee. All were on this nonsensical track that we're going to beat them. And they say we beat them in 83, so we're going to beat them in 86. They didn't pay any attention to the protectionism.
We were going to be hammered one way or another.
We were going to be hammered. They spent $8 million on this goofy law firm in Washington, D.C. Can you imagine that?
Now, just a minute, quite seriously again. At the moment, Zimmerman's companies have to pay 15% export tax into Canadian hands back to the provinces.
Yep.
What's going to happen if the stumpage is increased, you know, to meet or to satisfy the Americans' peeking across the border to make sure of that the 15% is being properly compensated for. Is that not going to put up the price of all our lumber exports throughout the world?
Not throughout the world, Jack. If it goes on stumpage, and if it goes on stumpage all over the province, then certainly it will. But that doesn't make sense to put it on all over. 50% of the coastwood doesn't go to the United States. It goes offshore.
But if our
someplace.
stumpage is increased to meet the Americans' demand, surely that will increase the cost of our raw materials on everything. Paper, manufactured products, and lumber. Won't it?
Some, yep.
So what will Zimmerman want? Will he want to keep the 15%, or will he want to see it transferred
Well, the
into stumpage?
15%, some of it will be absorbed by the consumer in the United States. That's $300 or $400 a house.
How many jobs are we going to lose?
Very few, if any, in British Columbia, Jack. I think this.
Can you say that seriously?
Seriously, Mawiney and what's his partner's name, Charlie Whitman. They're
talking about 17,000 jobs.
It's absolute nonsense, Jack. Absolute nonsense. In the worst possible time this industry had, from 78 to 83 or 84, when we went through a massive technological changes in the interior, when we lost all of the big mills on the coast that hadn't been modernized, Chemainus, Vancouver Plywoods, et cetera, we only lost 7,300 direct jobs. And
you think we can survive this?
Sure, certainly. Very few, if any, lost jobs.
I'm sorry I lays the leadership thing at all now, because we'll get nothing but calls about this silly leadership ploy of yours. Go ahead, please.
I sympathize with Mr. Munro's, excuse me, position whether to stay with the I.W.A. or go as the leader of the NDP party. It would be interesting to see Mr. Munro being slammed by somebody as he has slammed Mr. Van der Zam's party and Mr. Bennett's party before that. But the thing that really would scare me would be to see Jack Munro as Premier of the province, because I think he's so narrow-minded. I don't think the policies that we have now would be worse with Mr. Munro in there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Put him down as doubtful.
It's an old crack, that. Go ahead, please.
Hello to the two Jacks. I hope that Mr. Munro does run for the NDP leadership, and I hope he beats Mr. Harcourt, because maybe if we have a millionaire entrepreneur as leader of the Socreds and a union labor leader as the leader of the NDP, maybe we can get some sanity with the evolution of a third party, like perhaps Art Lee or anybody, but
Never
anything from these two extremes.
Never know.
Never know. Thank you. I like that call. I'll put him down as doubtful, too.
Oh, no, he's a yes.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, gentlemen. Jack, Mr. Munro, the question that I'm asking goes back to about 1983, 84, the general strike.
Right.
I would like to know, and if you would disclose to the public, what went on in the living room with Mr. Bennett. I'll hang up and listen to your response.
Well, that's an old story, Jack, and people are going to raise it. The trade union movement, the BC Fed leadership decided that we could not continue with this march towards a general strike, and we chose to negotiate a settlement to it. I was asked if I would be the person that would go and meet with Mr. Bennett to get a resolve. I did that. The people who then turned all the flack on me are not in the trade union movement any longer. And that story is well known.
Go ahead, please.
Just a comment and a question. Jack, if you seriously think that this media is going to treat you coochie-coo the way they treat you now as the union leader, you're good for a few quotes on that, but the minute if you ever became the leader, they grind you up. You better stay where you are. Now, I want to know, seriously, who it was that approached you and asked you from within the party to run. If it's someone credible from within the party that asked you to run, you might get some support. But if you're not going to come out and tell us who it was that asked you to run, well, then I think you're flying a white flag there, my friend.
Well, if I decide to not run, then it's not fair to the people that talk to me about it.
Why not?
Well, they don't particularly want to be I think, labeled as flying a flag, as you call it, that's unsuccessful.
I think you should be upfront about it.
Well, I'm upfront about most things. I've told them that I would not disclose who it was.
Okay. I won't chase you on that, but the guy was right. Go ahead, please.
Next, I just got a comment, Jack.
I really like you, but sometimes you
for
make it
Mr.
very
Munro
difficult.
There. don't have a chance as the NDP leader. He's can't organize his I.W.A. people, so I don't think he'd ever make her as the Premier of British.
Why do you think the I.W.A. is not organized?
Eh? Put him down as doubtful. You game for another session?
Certainly.
After the break.
So Harcourt.
Eh?
Harcourt phoned me last night.
Did he?
Yeah. He said he wanted to have absolutely no part. He wanted to disassociate himself completely from any remarks by McWilliams.
Oh, he's always working, isn't he?
Yeah. This thing is so goddamn hyped up, I can't get out of it for a few
I
days.
know that silly little thing, you know, and I just regarded it as a throwaway Saturday afternoon. I didn't realize it would go quite so quick.
Oh, shit, it's crazy.
It's a measure of your popularity.
8-minute hard count.
That was a good piece we did in lumber just now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I think so, too.
All them bloody ministers are meeting tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is tougher every fucking day. Honest to God. Surely I can walk away, find something to do, Jack.
You got to have the support staff out there, or else you can't do it yourself. What the hell?
I don't know what to do. Never was so confused in my life. Tough. Because I'm not in good shape these days, mentally. I'm all right when the programs are.
Oh, sure. Oh, the program is good. That's what the people see. They think the program's swell. Why are you thinking about retiring?
I don't know.
Don't know the worry that goes
The
into
worry
it.
is more worry than work. You've got to be. I mean, I don't flee about like I used to flee about, fly about. I don't.
10.
Go ahead to Jack Munro.
Hello, Jack. I'd love to see you become leader of the NDP, because every time you appeared on TV during the last election campaign, waving your arms, beer belly quivering, mouthing obscenities, it meant at least another vote, 20 votes at least for social credit. Keep up the good work, my boy, and maybe someday even you might realize that BC really isn't.
Did you phone me this morning on the radio program? Sounds like the same nonsense.
Oh, damn it, she's finished. Go ahead from Edgewood.
Yeah, Jack, your feedback on this, on your telephones, you better check into it.
Why? What's happening?
I hear everything everybody says, you and Jack Munro.
Okay, well, what's that?
Won, but anyway, I'd just like to make a comment on Jack Munro's.
Yes, do carry on.
It's on Lyle Hansen. I didn't support him whatsoever. He's in my riding, and I didn't support him, but I think he's out on left field. I think he did a good job when he was in there as the MLA.
Who, Lyle Hansen?
Yes.
He's just in
Lyle McWilliams.
Oh, McWilliams. Oh, you had the wrong name. Lyle
Job
McWilliams.
when he was in there, and I think his comments are, he's got a mouth problem.
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
right.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack Munro?
Yes.
I heard the other lady there, and when she said that, you can understand what we're up against in BC. But as far as I'm concerned, and anybody working, I think you did a very good job with the I.W.A., and I think you'd make a great leader. And I think, too, that in BC we need that, because we've had social credit so long, and I don't know the people in BC, and about the few swear words, if that's going to change the vote, you can tell yourself, we need people like you in office, and a little honesty wouldn't hurt either.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks. Yep.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack, I have several people that worked for me during the I.W.A. strike that were drawing strike pay, and they were working part-time for me in an agricultural basis. And they just said they weren't getting anywhere in that strike. And I think it'd be, if you became leader of the NDP and eventually got in, it'd be fantastic instead of fantastic.
Oh, I don't know where you're coming from. Certainly, there are not very many people who don't understand that we did win that strike. We do have job protection. We do have early retirement. We have 300 or 400 people or something have applied for early pension as a result of the improvements in the pension plan.
It costs them money.
And at some point in time, people have to stand up to, in this case, the forest industry. They were trying to grind us into the ground, and
I think they're just trying to recover what the investor has in those companies.
no, it's obvious you don't understand.
Okay, we'll leave that. I don't want to get into the whole I.W.A. strike again. Go ahead, please.
Hey there, Jack.
Yep.
I hope you go for it.
Thank you.
You should go for it.
Good, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack, I think you should go for it. I think you make a good leader. And even if you and Van der Zam are totally opposite in your ideas, I think you're both honest men, and that's what we need.
Thank you, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack, this is a first-time caller. Jack Munro, a few years ago, I used to think of you as a breath of fresh air as far as the labor movement was concerned. But the way that I saw you profiled as far as this I.W.A. situation the last bit here, I was very, very disappointed. I don't like to hear somebody who's in a position like yourself to use the swear words. As a matter of fact, if I repeated them right now, I'd probably be censored on this call-in. And I've been very, very disappointed in your performance in the last little while.
Okay, how did you vote in the last election, Jack asked you?
How did I vote?
Yeah.
I voted so cred.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack, first of all, I have an apology to make to you. When I saw you at the Expo auction, I shouldn't have yelled out, "Look, everybody, it's Laurier Lapierre." That was pretty rude. But back to this comment on the radio program.
I wasn't at, you're not talking to me about Expo, are you?
Oh, his call got lost. Not funny. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack and Jack. Jack, I voted NDP. Do me a favor.
Yes.
If you want the good NDP government next time around, let the lean fighting machine go in there and run all the way. Like the lady said, people want a lean fighter in there and a politician, experienced politician.
Yeah. She said I had a beer belly. I don't drink. I don't know how. It's just a belly.
I know you don't drink, but you certainly have what looks like corpulence.
Next call.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Munro.
Yes.
I would suggest if you go into politics that you clean up your vocabulary.
Do you agree with what I say if I didn't swear?
Well,
Yes. The answer is
some
yes.
instances,
Yeah,
but I do think that you can get your
I know
point across without using foul words.
I know. The problem is with people who don't like that I swear sometimes is that they don't want to agree with what I say, but they have to agree with what I say, so they use this other excuse about they don't like me because I swear.
Yeah, but you give them the excuse.
Yeah, but I'm interested that she agrees with what I say. And
Well,
she's not-
anybody with a control of the English language doesn't need to use those words.
Yeah.
Thank you,
yeah,
ma'am.
right.
We're both
Yeah.
agreed.
That's
Valid
support
point.
from somebody other than NDP.
Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Mr. Munro. How are you?
Well, thank you.
I had the pleasure of serving you dinner some while ago. Anyway, in light of the British economy and the TUC over the last 20 years, do you feel that the labor movement in this country has finally got to the point where it's finally throttled everybody into submission, or no?
Not at all. Not at all. And it's an interesting question. I think that people should understand that in Canada, the trade union movement has taken some pretty realistic positions, including one, we will not accept the blame for the mess that the country was or still is in parts by agreeing to concessions. The government and employers in this country have said, look, you got to increase your productivity, you got to do this, you got to do that. The trade union movement has done all of those things, and they are still blaming us. The building trades, for example, every major product in British Columbia in the last 5 years, I think, built by the building trades has been built ahead of schedule and under budget. And so the working people have done what their share as far as improving the economy is concerned. It's got absolutely no relationship to what somebody thinks the TUC in Great Britain
Go
is
ahead,
doing.
please.
Hi, Jack.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, congratulations on everything that's happening. I have one question about the language situation. When push comes to shove and you get into a frustration situation, you're dealing with people like that, the language thing can get a little broad, and adjectives are adjectives.
Yeah.
Have you been put in a situation by the media now that's going to jeopardize your situation with the I.W.A. thing?
Well, the media, I am really surprised and somewhat disappointed. The media have got a hold of this thing where it's almost impossible to turn around. I did not tell the media that I was thinking about running. Somebody else told them. And that's all I've heard since I've got back to town. It's really quite frustrating for me,
Kind of an opportunistic situation right now. Don't you think pretty soon you're going to have to either nip this in the bud and get back to work, or you're going to have to change horses here?
Very good point, sir, very good point.
I'm going to. If not before the weekend, right after the weekend.
Right after the weekend. The guest, in case you didn't recognize him, is Jack Munro, Regional President of the I.W.A.
Thank you,
He's
Mr.
dipping his foot in the political waters. How long he'll keep it there, we don't know. After the break. Well, tomorrow I'm going to introduce you, and myself too, to Lyle Hanson, the new Labour Minister of British Columbia, who's starting a tour around the province to see what changes might be recommended by various groups to the Labour Act, and they may have another major interview. 5 p.m. precisely. Stay tuned for the news.